right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Entrepreneurial Development Podcast. I'm your host, C. Muzan, here with the awesome guest. This guy, him and I have been able to see each other over the past year and a half or so, as I transitioned back into the Pennsylvania area. This gentleman is running the co-working space, or the shared space that I'm actually working out of. So after him and I had a good conversation a few times, I was like, John, I need you to come on the podcast. So happy to have John Tooher here on the Entrepreneurial Development Podcast. Thanks for coming on, John.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. Pleasure's mine. So here on the podcast, man, we jump right into it. So let's start off with the origin story, the number one. Like, how did John get to this point? Let's start off as a kid, as young as you want to go, and kind of walk me through your story.
Well, I guess if you want to go back that far, when I was about 10, I did have this moment of reflection when I thought, what do I want to do with myself in this life? It's kind of a frightening thought when you're 10.
You had that at 10? At 10 years old?
I did, yes. I just had this momentary thought of, gosh, I guess I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And I had this thought, and the immediate answer came to me was, oh, I'm just going to see the world. And I kind of forgot about that for a long time. It was profound, but it didn't drive me, at a surface level, but maybe it was driving me behind the scenes a bit. Mm-hmm. And I only remembered it really when I actually did the Simon Sinek Discover Your Why course, and it suddenly came back to me, that moment from probably 40 years before or more. So as I was saying, after college, I found myself back in my hometown, and it was great. I was working for GE, big company. I learned a lot there, but I could see my elementary school, or my elementary school literally across the road from the facility. And after a couple of years, I said, you know what, I got to get overseas. I got to go and see the world just for a couple of years. And I ended up getting a job with 3M in Germany, of all places, even though I didn't speak any German, but I didn't need to, because English was the lingua franca of the company. And I had this job where I used to fly around all over Europe, working with 3M suppliers, and it was great. And I did that for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then they asked me to move to the Netherlands, which I did with my family. And my kids were born in the Netherlands. In the meantime, I married a German woman. So hold on now. We got to take a couple steps back. So
sure. So when did the family kick in? What were you?
Yeah, this was around 98. We had our first child, but we were living in the Netherlands at that point.
Got you. And that was before the 3M position? That was after?
No, that was after 3M. So it was with 3M, really. It was a spin-off of 3M, but I was still with 3M, or a spin-off of 3M. Had our kids in the Netherlands. Then we moved to the UK with this 3M spin-off. Mm-hmm. And I worked there for 4 years until I left that company. Okay. And I joined a British company as head of their UK operations. Okay. And I was running about a 400 or 500 employee operation in the UK, and kind of getting ready to move internally in the UK up to Yorkshire, which is a very beautiful county in the north of England, but it's a long way from London, where we'd been used to living. Yeah. And the day I was leaving, the day we packed our furniture and everything into a delivery truck, I got a call from my boss's boss, and he said, John, I hate to do this to you, but would you guys move to the States instead of to Yorkshire? And I said, well, my immediate answer wanted to say yes, but I thought I'd better check with my wife first. So I said, I'll check with my wife, Kirsten, and she said fine. I think she was happy. And so we ended up coming to Philadelphia. And I'll tell you another interesting coincidence, Chris. Yeah. When I was working in my hometown back in that looking at my elementary school, I did a bit of amateur dramatics, and the last play that I practiced for, I never actually got on stage because I left to go to Germany.
Okay.
The last play I was involved in was called Philadelphia, Here I Come. So, I don't know. It was obviously there's certain
A little bit of
predestined things.
foreshadowing, right? A little
Absolutely.
foreshadowing there. That's interesting.
But anyway, in 2004, I found myself in Philadelphia, and I was asked to run the US arm of this company.
Okay.
And myself and my wife kind of wandered around looking for a place to live, and we ended up in just north of Downingtown near Marsh Creek, and love it up there. And I started to run this business and grow it, and it grew dramatically over the 10 years I was there. We went from about 150 employees to over 3,000.
Wow.
And I got to do a lot of traveling because we had facilities in San Diego, in Iowa, in London, Birmingham, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Manila,
Wow.
and sometimes Spain as well.
Wow.
And I spent a lot of time traveling and building this company up. And to be honest with you, I never actually interfaced or networked here. So it went really well. Unfortunately, our main customer ended up buying us, and then very soon afterwards got into big trouble with an acquisition they'd made in Spain. 2008 came along. The banks wanted their money back, didn't know how they were going to get it back. They started to get involved. It became a horrible environment. Yeah. And ultimately I left. And I found myself in America 10 years after coming here, not really knowing anybody or anything about being here. And so I had a choice. Well, I didn't really have much choice because my kids were here. My kids had grown up here. I didn't want to leave. I didn't really know anybody. And I wasn't really in a rush to get back into the corporate world either. Sure. By accident or by chance or whatever you might call it, luck, a friend of mine asked me to come to a startup event, and I decided to go. And at that event, I met a lady who asked me whether I'd help her with her startup. And being kind of naive and not really having much else to do, I said, sure.
Yeah.
So I got involved with her, and it was very interesting and just great. I'd never really been in the startup space at all.
Sure. Why did she ask? Why did she ask you specifically?
Well, I think I had a lot of operational experience, and she needed a COO or somebody that could sort of run the show, as it were.
Yeah.
And I had a background in advertising and mass production of websites and videos and that sort of thing. And her business was somewhere in that area. Yeah. I think she was just happy to find a fellow former corporate American that could talk her language,
Sure.
But anyway, I helped her for a while, and I met through her another individual who was also helping her, a guy called Dan Levens. And Dan was running an incubator sort of unit in media. And he and I got talking, and we discovered mutual admiration for each other, and we kind of saw things the same way. Dan, in the meantime, had been working on creating a company which he called Headroom, and told me a bit about it. I was kind of interested. I went away on vacation, and when I met up with Dan, and he said, would you like to partner with me on it? And I said, sure, I'd love to. The only thing was I wanted to add an additional service. He was going after space and to a degree collaboration, and I wanted to add a strategic planning service to the product offering or service offering. And he said he was fine with that. And his wife at the time, Erin, myself, and Dan essentially went into partnership and took Headroom off into the stratosphere, or not very high sphere, actually, initially.
Not initially, but now
it's stable, growing. I mean, it's gone through the usual sort of 4-year nurturing cycle that most companies go through.
sure.
And it's like every business when you're starting from scratch, it's a hell of a struggle.
Absolutely.
And but I feel like we've come out the other side.
Cool.
And Dan and Erin have subsequently left. I bought them out, and I now own the company 100%.
Nice.
But in the early days, we had one.
No, I was going to say, let me ask you really quick, John. Like, take me through when you left, when you wind up leaving the company that you were working with, and then just happened to show up to, right, or get invited to that, startup meeting. What were your thoughts in between that time? You're out of work. You're not really doing much. Like you said, you weren't in a rush to get back to corporate America. What were you thinking the plans were going to be?
Well, the last couple of years at that company had been pretty rough. And I was pretty spent anyway. I needed a break. And it took me at least 2 months to literally feel like I was a normal human being again.
Wow.
I kind of re-identifying with myself, or reconnecting with myself. I remember I decided to build a whole set of bookshelves.
As
and
like
it was
your
a great
leisure,
project.
right? Like as your fun time.
Absolutely, yeah. And every day I got up in the morning, I couldn't wait to get started just sawing and hammering and nailing away, trying to figure it all out.
Absolutely.
And that was so therapeutic for me as well. But there was this realization, how did those 10 years go by? And I actually never got to know anybody in America. I mean, what was I doing?
Sure.
And the reality is I was on a plane to somewhere else, or I was trying to catch up with the family, or I was semi-jet lagged and getting ready to take the next journey.
Right.
And, I tell every corporate person I know, get out and network, get out and meet people. You are living in a unreal monoculture inside your company, and they want you to think it's reality, but it isn't.
You can say that again, John. Say that again. It's not reality at all.
No, that's right. And it's so important to meet other people, talk to other people from different backgrounds and also different disciplines, And I also tell CEOs, don't go to a group of other CEOs. Right. What's the point in talking to other people who are doing what you're doing? Right. Talk to CIOs and CFOs and heads of HR and people who would be our subject matter experts. Sure. They'll tell you things your own people aren't telling you.
Absolutely.
And that's where you're going to learn the most, by talking to people who would otherwise be on your team if they were working for your company. They're the ones that allow you to go back to your own CTO and say, hey, why don't we do X or Y or Z? I noticed this other company's doing it, and it seems to be working for them. So, it's really important to get out and network.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I try to stress that because, again, I have friends that are in corporate America that don't see the importance of networking all the time, right? They don't always understand the importance of getting into another group, another peer group, learning new information. I've invited a few people that are, that are corporate friends of mine. And sometimes, they'll ask like, well, why would I come to this? Like, why would I come to this networking event? I'm like, because there's people there. And people that do other businesses, like it would be important to know these things. But that honestly, and I take it to different places, John, but that for me is one of the differentiators between an employee mindset and an entrepreneur mindset, right? As an entrepreneur, we understand that how important relationships and networking and getting around other people, we understand that. But in school, right, typically we get into this employee mindset via school, and schooling happens to be very much so about ourselves. It's like, you can't, right, you start to get into group projects as you get into high school and college, but really the formative years, it's all your test, your paper, don't look at the other person, no collaboration, it's all just you. And that forms a mindset that as we get into the corporate world, I believe it permeates, and people just think it's about them, their bubble, right, their silo, and not getting out. So the fact that you would say that it's super important for those other corporate, C-suite people that don't understand that. That's a good point. That's a good point. So again, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to also say that, in the corporate world, if you ask somebody a question, they'll probably say, why do you need to know that? Well, why are you asking that question? And in the corporate world, everyone's trying to be the hero, whereas in the entrepreneurial world, it's much more collaborative. And people, even if you're competing with them, they will be anxious to help you if they can. Absolutely. And it's, I think when you're in the corporate space, you're kind of conditioned to see everybody as something of a threat. And I think people have got to get out of that corporate world and see the non-corporate world and realize just how friendly and helpful people are in reality,
Absolutely. Did you have any of that, really quick, did you have any of that inkling as you were going through this transition? You were kind of done with corporate. Were you ever thinking like, I know I can never go back to corporate, so I need to figure out something new? Were you thinking about maybe one day going back to corporate, just not the right time? How were you looking at your next move?
No, I really felt I was done with it, because as I said, the last couple of years were the worst form of corporate you could get, where you were being asked to do the impossible. You were essentially, just not comfortable ethically or morally. I'm not saying anything illegal was going on, but it was just the attitude was just so inhuman, and it was all about having something to say to the board rather than actually running the business.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't take it anymore, and I felt very uncomfortable with it. And listen, there's a lot of good people in the corporate world, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I much prefer the startup entrepreneurial space. People are pretty honest, straightforward, call a spade, as we say in Ireland. I don't know what the equivalent saying is here.
No, that's the right saying, or we say the same saying here. It's all the same.
I sometimes forget where I heard these sayings,
Yeah.
But anyway, I really didn't want to go back if I could help it. And that said, I had no idea how the entrepreneurial space worked.
Sure.
I kind of thought I did. I thought I could just walk in the door and sort of, everything would be just so easy and I'd know it. Yeah. But that was absolutely not right. And I after a few years, I realized, don't be so tough on yourself, because if you go back to the first day you worked in a corporation, you were the new kid on the block. You didn't know anything. And, it took you 2 to 3 years there to get known for doing whatever it is you do and to get some respect. And obviously you're waiting for the other new kids to come in behind you, to make you the older one,
Sure.
And it's the same in the entrepreneurial space. You're the new kid on the block, and you got to learn and give yourself a chance to learn. Yeah. It isn't straightforward. There's a lot to learn. Yeah. You have to know more or less everything about running a business: marketing, sales, finance, operations, everything. And so
walk me through your, like, the first years of Headroom, right? Or actually let's finish up the story, after connecting with the lady that you helped with the startup, and then obviously Dan pulling you in and saying, hey, Headroom, you knew that was the way you were going to go, huh? Like Headroom was going to be it for what you wanted to do?
Yeah. For me, I was very keen to bring what I'd learned about strategic planning from my last company to the small business space. And like I said, we'd grown from 150 employees to 3,000. We made an incredible amount of money. As a CEO, I never really had to worry about whether we made money last month. I never looked at last month's results because my job was to make sure we got the things we said we would get done, 2 years ago, done.
Right.
And I was just setting us up for success. So my goal was to get around, tell people what we were trying to do, why we were doing it, why we would need their help in getting it done, finding platforms that would give us the capability to do what we were hoping to do as well. And systems and workflows and all those big things that take years to put in place. We had a plan, we did it. And like I said, it worked really well. And it was new to me, the whole idea of having a roadmap. I came to it late. And initially I was somewhat skeptical, to be honest. But once I'd done my first one, it was like, what a revelation. I felt such a relief because I kind of knew what I was going to be doing for the next 2 years or 3 years.
Right.
And we did it every year, and I just found it to be so helpful. It's so good because you come up with a strategy, then you develop a story around the strategy as to why it makes sense to do what we're doing. And then you tell people about it and you get them on board. And when you can get everybody on board and aligned with you, it's so easy to get stuff done.
Absolutely.
Most companies keep their employees in the dark and then wonder why the employees don't get it. Well, they don't get it because they don't know what it is.
Right.
Right.
You haven't said anything.
That's right. And we told them absolutely everything. And it was amazing how our employees just rallied behind it. Even if sometimes it was detrimental to them for a while, they sort of saw the long run and realized it was the way to go. And so I wanted to bring that to the small business world. That's why Headroom is space collaboration strategy.
Got it.
And so we got started. Initially, our number one goal, though, was to fill the space because we had a lot of costs associated with setting up Headroom in media initially.
Sure.
And, we're paying, a lot of rent every month, a lot of furniture, a lot of overhead projectors, and God knows what. So we had a lot of sunk costs and not a lot of revenue. And, month after month, it was pretty hairy because we were losing quite a lot of money.
Now, how did you get started? Was this just on personal capital?
Savings? Yeah, personal savings from all of us.
Got it.
And again, it's a thing that small businesses need to understand. Entrepreneurs, you've got to have savings. You're not going to hit the sales targets you think you're going to hit. Absolutely. And the whole secret of being successful is ultimately tenacity and being able to hang in there long enough. You will get there if you can hang in long enough.
That's it.
And it goes back to my old adage, find something you like and stick at it.
Yeah.
If you stick at it long enough, you'll get good at it. If you like it, you'll be good at it. And if all those things come together, people will recognize that and they'll do business with you. But you got to be around long enough for those people to get to know you and know you can deliver.
I think that point right there, John, is the point that entrepreneurs and small business, they have to understand. This is a longevity game, right?
Yes.
The business of business is to stay in business, right? The business of business is to stay in business. And so the key is whoever can hold their breath the longest is going to win. Whoever can continue to keep going, they're going to win. And so that's right. That's what this becomes. I'm glad that you understand that and you say that to people, because I think we're living in a time right now that people don't think of business that way. It's what can I do it this year, right? Quick metrics, things to get things going quickly, because they don't understand how long this game is, right? Business is not meant to just be overnight. You're not supposed to build something overnight, right? It takes time to be able to do it.
Absolutely. Nothing is worth having if it isn't hard to get, right? And I always say to people, okay, look, have you ever thought about climbing Mount Everest? And they normally say no.
Nobody.
And I say, well, you'd imagine that's a pretty tough thing to do. And they say, yes. Well, it's going to be about as tough as that to be successful. And when you're getting closer and closer to being successful, it's going to get harder and harder. And it's just being able to stay in there for the last few steps to the peak.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's kind of downhill from then on. It's not easy, but it's still a bit dangerous. But, at least you're going with gravity.
Absolutely.
And, a business is very like that. And hanging in there, just that tiny little bit extra makes all the difference.
Let me ask you, John, really quick. Really quick, when you tell people that, because I'm interested in this, when you tell people that, do you ever think that it scares them away from starting to climb Mount Everest? Do you ever have to deal with that?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I find people are of two sorts. They're either determined to do it. To a certain extent, that advice goes over their head. But at least I hope subliminally it's in the background. They're thinking, oh yeah, John said it would be tough, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there are people who just can't get started. They want everything to be perfect.
What do you say to those people? Because I know, one, for our audience and just people that are out there, that is one of the things that I found is the struggle. It's just getting people to get started. So what are normally you seeing, or what are you telling people, to overcome that?
Well, again, I mean, and I would say this, you've got to have a roadmap, first of all, right? You got to pick your fight, as it were. You got to say, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, I could do 101 things, but I'm going to pick one and just do it. And get started. Know what it is you want to do. Know what success should look like, and figure out a course of action to get you there. And then start working on it. And the reality is, surprise, surprise, if you get the shit done, you get there, And the problem is, if you sit around thinking whether the 100 different ways of doing this one thing, which one of them is the best, you're never going to get there.
Absolutely.
If you think something should probably work, then just get on with it. Do it that way. Because it's a lot better to do it slightly inefficiently than to never do it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And that's that mindset. It goes back to, again, what I talk about with that employee entrepreneur mindset, right? One of the things that we don't know, we've been conditioned to always want to learn and then go do, right? That's what school does for us. Like, learn all this information, then go take the test, get all of your credits, then go get your job, right? It's a learn, then do. The entrepreneur, it's the opposite. It's we learn by doing. Right.
Yes.
So we're moving at the same time that we're learning, and that's how our brains have to work. And that's one of the things I see that just stops so many people, because they try to learn so much and get so much information. And like you said, right, pick the best way out of these 17 different things on this one topic that actually doesn't mean much to the grand scheme of their business.
Yes.
We spend so much time, as a mentor of mine once say, you major in the minors. Right? That's not the thing to do. We're not majoring in minor things. We're making quick decisions and learning as we go.
Yes. And I think that is the exact recipe for success, provided it's done in the context of an overall roadmap.
Absolutely.
This is where I'm trying to get to 2 years from now. Then it makes a lot of decisions a lot easier, because there's a context for the decisions. Does this help me get to where I want to get to or not? If you don't have a direction, like I said to people, if you don't have a destination, you will never get there.
Absolutely.
Because by logic, and it's exactly the same. If you don't, describe the future to yourself the way you want it to be, then you've got nothing to aim at. And if you've got nothing to aim at, you're just shooting your arrows all over the place.
So important.
And nothing's sticking, and you're not building momentum. So basically, we had a pretty good plan. I must say, we were relatively good at deploying it. Our trouble was, a lot of expense and income growing slowly. Now, we got to a point eventually where we said, you know what? we needed another location because we had some overheads, and those overheads were going to be the same whether we had one or two locations.
Right.
So we decided, let's have another location, another opportunity, more capacity to spread the overhead over. So we opened up another location in Wayne, and that a year later. Again, we just about started to fill media, and then we opened up Wayne, and it was empty and sucking up money.
Yeah.
So that was a 2-year, and it probably was 3 years in before we kind of felt we were breaking even.
Mm-hmm.
And then in our 4th year, we started to make some money. And now we're in we're about to go into our 5th year. Yeah, we are just into our 5th year. And I would say, we're probably out of danger, as it were.
Good. Did you ever struggle? Like, what were some of the big struggles kind of in that year 2, year 3, right? Because again, as business owners, we understand it's not just always straight to the top, right? Like there's going to be some peaks and valleys. How was the experience for you? Any real struggles, like getting clients or getting residents, or right, any permits, things of that nature, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's staying the course, wondering, God, are we doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Secondly, I know we struggled a little bit with the strategy and the space businesses, because there were people who they would get confused and think that they had to do strategic planning with us if they wanted to use the space. So we ended up really focusing on just marketing the space only.
Sure.
And keeping the message simple, and that helped. And then probably in year 3 we started to push strategy more, and now that's going very well, and it's an integral part of Headroom, because I do strategic planning with companies, not necessarily any that are at Headroom, although some of them have used my services, but most of my clients are outside of Headroom. And now, when I've done a strategic roadmap with them, there will be specific needs that the company has for subject matter expertise to help them deliver on some of those objectives. And that's where I dip into the pool of companies that are at Headroom. And I can get a CPA or an IP lawyer or a marketeer, an SEO specialist, whatever my client might need, I can recommend somebody from the Headroom space. So it becomes this sort of virtuous circle of work, and it's good for the community, and it's good for my business, for the strategy side of the business.
Absolutely.
It's about hanging in there long enough for people to get to know who you do, what you do,
sure,
and get them to experience it and have a good experience, and then tell people about it, and you gradually become known for doing what you do. And it's just like that first job when you started outside of college or high school. You got to get known for being able to deliver the goods, and if you do, people you get promoted and you get recognized and you get paid more, and your career takes off.
That's how it goes in the entrepreneur space. It's about adding value to the market, right? It's just, you get paid for the value that you bring to the marketplace. So you have to be good at what you do, right? You have to have a good product. You have to have great service or great follow. You have to be good at what you do. And then the rest kind of plays out, as long as you stick with it, right? Like we talked about, as long as you continue to go,
correct,
it's going to work out for people.
Yeah, you really do have to repeatedly deliver the goods, and if you do, then you'll get recognized for it.
Absolutely.
And people want to hang out with people that do things well.
Absolutely.
It's just the way things are. And
yeah.
So I would say, lots of trials and tribulations along the way, because you're learning all the time.
Sure.
But it gets to a point where you become the old hand on the shop floor, as it were,
Of course.
and you know where to find stuff and get things, and
experience. It's experience. That's what it's about. It's about experience and continuing. The more that, especially in this entrepreneur journey, when you own your own thing or doing your own thing, you're just learning every day, right? Like at a job,
That's right.
you may not be learning. Once you get your job down, you may not be learning much every day. It's just kind of repeated tasks that you're doing over and over again. But in our journey, I learn something new every single
Yeah.
day.
You have to.
You have to,
Yeah.
otherwise you won't survive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question as a part, like, because you were in a partnership, right, with Dan. How were the conversations? How did you guys figure out how to work on each other's strengths, work with each other's weaknesses? Like, what was that process?
Well, again, I was very lucky because both Dan and Erin are, very enlightened and good listeners and good team players. And, we made sure we were aligned. Like, obviously, occasionally we would have differences of opinion, but we ironed it out and we always walked away with a consensus. And, it's hard to get that. That's a tough part of being in a partnership. Because it's easy for little differences to get in the way. You don't realize how much they're getting in the way. And I must say, Dan and Erin were great, and they've gone on to grow their own businesses separately to Headroom. And, they're doing fine, and we're still in great terms, and, we're there for each other. But ultimately, Headroom probably just was more aligned with what I wanted to do than what they ultimately wanted to do. Similar, but not quite the same. So I think it worked out for all of us. And it was a great learning exercise for all of us, especially for me.
Absolutely.
Dan and Erin had been involved in the startup world before. They had a bit more of a clue, and I was lucky I could learn from them,
Absolutely. Now, is there any way you'll go back to corporate America after this point?
No, I doubt it. I mean, I do occasionally get involved. I work part-time, just on a consultancy basis for a British company called Hugh Andrews.
Okay.
And they ask me from time to time to take part in a really interesting kind of role play, where I will go to a company along with other people, and we're all acting the roles of C-level individuals for a number of fictitious companies. These companies, though, have websites and annual reports and, scenarios and so on. And these things are handed over to our customer, and they have to sort of read all of this and then mimic, or the role play is I turn up, I'm the COO of a $5 billion business or whatever.
Right. And
they've got to interview me and try and ultimately sell their product or service. And they've got to learn, you can't just go in and say, I'll sell you 500 licenses, I'll give you a deal.
Right.
They got to learn that if you're talking to a C-level person, you got to try and understand what their problems are and come across as a company or an individual that can help them with those problems. So that gets me back in. And now the great thing about it is I get to work with companies like Salesforce, VMware, Accenture, big, pretty impressive companies. And it's just nice occasionally to get back in there knowing I can leave again,
that you control your life, right? You can leave, you can stay. It's up to you. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's a nice way to stay in touch, but that's about as close as I want to get at this point.
Got it. What's the vision for Headroom?
So the vision for Headroom is Dan and Erin, I took over the business in September. So 2020 for me is really consolidating getting control of the business on my own, growing the number of residents we have. We have about 80 companies at the moment. I'd like to get that up to 100 by the end of next year. And I have an interest in another company called Power Match, which is a fantastic networking platform in the greater Philadelphia area. And then I've got the strategic planning consultancy side of the business, which is again growing. Yeah. So it's just, growth on as many fronts as possible.
That's it.
I don't expect us to open up another location because there's just no need to at the moment.
Right.
And it's a massive undertaking. Certainly $100,000 investment at least,
Yeah.
with a long, wait before you get your pay back.
Right.
So I'm not in any hurry to do that just at the moment.
Right. I understand.
Despite the fact that I get asked to do it probably once a month,
Really.
but no, it's going to be consolidation and revenue growth.
Absolutely.
Really,
Absolutely. Do you have someone that works with you, right? Because you're normally the guy that's working with other small business owners and getting them on that plan and on that path. Do you reach out, like this is kind of more like a mentorship question. Do you have somebody that mentors you or strategically guides you?
Well, I am very comfortable with telling friends and people I respect my problems. I have probably 20 advisors
Got it.
because I'm perfectly happy to tell them what I'm struggling with and hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of having multiple sources of the truth, as it were.
Yeah.
So that's an advantage of being in somewhere like Headroom. I can go and talk to a marketeer about marketing. I can go and talk to a CPA about finance. I can talk to a lawyer about legal issues.
Right.
So I have a lot of advisors around me here. And I mean, that's part of the collaboration. But like I said, it's very important to talk to subject matter experts.
Yeah.
Be well advised about a particular area of business, and then it's a lot easier to make good decisions. I think having somebody that you trust to hear yourself talking is a great thing.
Absolutely.
It's sometimes when you hear yourself describing a problem, that's actually 90% of the battle.
Absolutely. I give the same like I talk to people on the therapy side of things, right? Because I've been, I've done some therapy. My wife has done some therapy, and normally I always tell people it was never about what my therapist would say. It was just about me actually talking about it, so I could hear
Exactly.
myself talking about it. And she
Yeah.
might, ask a question or probe here, but at the end of the day, I was coming to my own conclusions by just talking about it. And so like you said, just having people in your corner that you can feel comfortable talking to, whether it be business or personal, I think it's important to progress forward. So
Absolutely. And don't hold things in, let it out. People are more than happy to help you if you ask for help.
Absolutely.
And that's always been my mantra. And sometimes I say, John, shut up. I can't help it. You can't change me at this point. But yeah, no, things are good. And I'm, as I said, looking forward to 2020. We've got great clients. I've got great clients in my strategy business and in Headroom.
Awesome.
It's a great place to hang out. As you know, you use it frequently.
Yes, I do.
And has a positive vibe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with the collaboration and the people that are around, right? I'm big on just networking and being around the right group of people. When I did come to Headroom, that's one of the things I found, like just like you said, right? You might be sitting in a room next to a CPA or next to someone that, is an attorney or does something different, and I've had those water cooler conversations, right? Just walking into the kitchen and
Exactly.
being by the water cooler, hey, how are you, what's going on, and then we can start talking. That's one of the perks and one of the best things about Headroom, and the reason why I'm there also. So John, I appreciate it. As we wrap up, tell people, where can they find you if they wanted to reach out to you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing to do is to go to our website. It's www.headroom.net. And also, we have an office in Media on Veteran Square and State Street, and one in Wayne on Sugartown Road. But probably the website's the best place to find us and kind of give you an idea of what we're all about.
Awesome. Well, for everyone that's out there listening, reach out to John, find him. This guy can help you if you're a small business owner or someone that is in the process of running their business and you need more of a strategy, more of a plan, someone that can sit down and kind of point you in the right direction. Talk to John, reach out to him. He's an awesome guy. Stop by Headroom. I'll be there probably. John will probably be there, right? You get a chance to meet some of the other people. But John, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast, man. Anything that I can do to continue to help you and help Headroom grow, by all means, you know, you have me here to support. And I appreciate you taking time out to talk to some of the listeners and share your story.
Chris, I appreciate you going to the trouble of putting this together, and I enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Until next time, we're signing off. Entrepreneurial Development. We'll talk to you soon.